is going to be an experience bordering on impossible.
What's the worst thing that could possibly happen?
Oh, Jesus.
That is a clip from Hulu's new documentary, Fyre Fraud. It takes a look at all the drama that ensued after the absolute dumpster fire of a music festival. Fyre Festival didn't hit, it didn't happen. It went viral, though, and that new documentary dropped on Monday. But Hulu is not the only streaming service releasing a look at Fyre Festival this week. Netflix will drop its on Friday, and that one is called Fyre, the greatest party that never happened. Joining me now in our studio is TV Guide editor Lindsay McDonald to break down the differences, to relive all that was Fyre Festival, and to talk about whether or not this means a little fire between Hulu and Netflix, a rivalry here. Lindsay, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So first I want to talk to you about the differences between these documentaries because, I mean, look, I'll watch 2 documentaries on Fyre Festival.
Oh, yeah.
I will. It went viral. It was amazing. It was horrible for the people, but it was amazingly horrible. And now we're getting these 2 documentaries. Tell me about the timing, first of all, because I'd seen the trailer for the Netflix one several weeks ago, and then all of a sudden the Hulu one kind of appears, drops first. Was that always its intended release date, or do we know if Hulu moved it up?
Yeah, Hulu definitely moved it up, and the one that everyone was expecting, the one that everyone was talking about, was the Netflix one, and Hulu sort of came out of nowhere and dropped theirs on Monday, like 4 days before Netflix.
Dropped the full movie.
Yeah, dropped the full movie of their Fyre Fraud. And the reason they gave was sort of they wanted people to watch theirs first because there's a lot of context in theirs that will make Netflix's documentary make more sense. And I do see that. I do agree. But it does also sort of feel like they wanted to beat Netflix to the punch.
Wait, so Hulu is literally saying that they dropped theirs to help people understand Netflix's? That feels a little passive-aggressive if that's what they're saying. Or maybe a little, I don't know, like, are they trying to make themselves look better?
You know, I really think the whole point of it was just to sort of get in there first.
Sure.
And
had we known that the Hulu one was coming? I don't even remember seeing a trailer for that one, but I might have just missed it.
We did know that it was coming, but it was not nearly as publicized as the Netflix one. Everyone was well aware that Netflix had this documentary. It was sort of floating in the ether that Hulu also had a documentary of their own.
Now, have you gotten a chance to watch the Hulu one yet?
I have watched both, actually.
Both? Okay, so like you just said, Hulu may be giving more context. What do you think, having seen both, the differences are?
You know, there's a lot that's the same in both documentaries. They obviously both touch on sort of the social media frenzy around the festival before and after. And they both really heavily go into the promotional video that had all of these models enjoying this great time on the beach and then sort of promising something that was not the case for the festival.
Right. I mean, we saw that footage, and we saw what people purchased their tickets based upon, and then what went viral was their social media recordings of the actuality of, like, horrible cheese sandwiches in styrofoam containers instead of, like, sushi spreads. It was a stark difference. But the thing is, we got so much from that festival on social media. What I always look for in a documentary is kind of the untold story. Do you think that one or the other or both delivers on that?
You know, I think Hulu focuses a lot more on Billy McFarland, the guy who sort of created and put on this, calling it a festival. It's not quite that. But they really focus on his life and his business and how he sort of got to the point where he could create this Fyre Fraud. And the Netflix documentary focuses more on the year where the festival was getting planned, being promoted, and then ultimately falling to pieces.
Well, what's crazy is that there was a year that it was being planned and promoted. So Hulu's documentary actually has an interview with Billy, right?
Yes.
And what's wild about this is, like we saw in that clip, I mean, they call it a con, a fraud, because isn't he facing charges or was convicted? Where is he at on that over the festival?
He's actually in prison.
Okay, he's in prison right now. Okay, got it.
But, so it basically... he basically did some not totally illegal things to try and make this festival happen, to put money where there was no money. And ultimately that did get him convicted. Okay. And the interview, I'll say, with Hulu, you think it's going to be like, this poor guy who was put in a situation where he had to commit these crimes. It does not go that way. Hulu's interview with him at one point kind of turns into an interrogation of like, what did you do? Why did you do this?
I have to say that's actually what I would want to expect, because you saw, I mean, and look, part of the reason it went viral is because people who bought these tickets had the money to buy these tickets, and they were going to this crazy luxurious festival. But at the end of the day, what they went through, I mean, I remember seeing footage of people like trapped in airports, they couldn't leave, like it was kind of horrible. So I would want him to get a hard-hitting interrogation style interview done. And do we know why Hulu has an interview with him and Netflix doesn't? Is it just the different narratives of the documentaries?
Ultimately, I think it came down to a decision of he wanted to get paid for his interview. And the people behind the Netflix documentary pretty much came out and said, we didn't feel comfortable with him profiting off of this story where he really hurt so many people.
And by the way, I want to bring up what is actually, I have it on my phone. What is? So he's in prison. He was sentenced to 6 years for 2 counts of fraud and 2 more counts. Okay, so there we go. We actually have a clip from the director of the Netflix documentary, Chris Smith, and he talks a little bit about both why Billy and Ja Rule, whose name was attached to the festival, were not involved. Let's take a look at that.
You know, Ja was like the public face of the company, so it wasn't like he was involved with a lot of the logistics and the details of the things from what we could tell. So I think, you know, the public persona that he had is, you kind of got an understanding of his role. Billy McFarland, we tried to film on, I think it was 2 different occasions, and in the end, Billy wanted to get paid, and we didn't feel that it was right for him to benefit when so many other people had suffered it, you know, as a result of his actions.
So as you were just saying, that's our ET Live interview with Chris Smith. Billy, they tried, but he wanted to get paid. Ja Rule was more so a famous face attached to it as opposed to a clear planner, an organizer, and logistics guy. So what do you think this means? And this is my last question for you in terms of any rivalry or continued rivalry between Netflix and Hulu. Hulu drops the documentary. Netflix is out on Friday. How competitive is this, and how much is Fyre Festival part of that?
I mean, it's always competitive when you're talking about streaming services because ultimately it's the same product but just different platforms for it. And we saw a little bit of that when Hulu got into the Marvel game and they sort of started putting out Marvel's Runaways, which was their sort of superhero series, whereas before Netflix had dominated that market with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. And now I think it'll be interesting to see if Hulu stays in the Marvel game because Netflix has obviously started canceling and divesting itself of all of its Marvel content. So that'll be interesting to see if Hulu sticks it out.
Interesting. All right, TV Guide's Lindsay McDonald. Lindsay, thank you so much. I love that we're going to get this insight into Fyre Festival from both Hulu and Netflix because I'll take all the background I can get and love that it's come back into our zeitgeist.